Hey everyone, this is Jason, and I'm going to create a tutorial really designed for other developers who are brand new to Git, who really haven't wrapped their heads around kind of all the nuances, and it's kind of strange watching some of the Git tutorials and kind of figuring out just what does it mean when people are talking about branches and remotes and commits, stashes and tags, and origins and master and heads. What are all these terms? What do they mean? And I think that there's really a need for a tutorial to talk about kind of how to wrap your mind around the concepts of Git, rather than so much the semantics of all the power of it and how to use it. So that's why I'm recording this. This is specifically designed for 10.4. However, any developer could probably benefit from it if you're kind of new to Git. I'm not going to edit this, so I'm going to stumble a lot. I figure you guys can deal with that. So I'm going to start from absolute scratch. And initially, I'm not going to use a lot of the correct technical terms. I'm going to be focused primarily on getting certain concepts across. So here we go. So what you'll see here is an empty folder. Just like anything, this is specific. I'm going to be using macOS 10 and Git Tower. It's a GUI client for Git. Just know that you can use the command line to do all this stuff, but that's what I'm going to be using. So here we go. So I'm going to start with an empty folder, and the first thing we're going to do is to talk about kind of what Git is conceptually. You can think of Git as a hidden folder which contains a list of snapshots of what files existed at various points in time. So I'll say that again. Git is a hidden folder which contains a list of snapshots of what files existed at various points in time. Now, the correct term for these snapshots is called commits. So if I say what commits, I'm referring to snapshots, and it's snapshots of what a file is. So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I need to create, well, a file. So I'm going to open up TextEdit. Actually, I'm going to open up TextMate. Let's do that. And some of this stuff you'll see happening kind of off-site, but okay. So here's an empty text file. Let me just shrink this down so you can see it. And I'm just going to call this line 1. And line 2. And then that's it. I'm just going to save this out. And I'm going to save it to this open file. If you don't know what this is default folder X. I'm going to select the open file that's open, or open folder that's open, sorry. And I'm just going to call this a file. And it's labeled as a text extension. Now this could be HTML, it could be JavaScript, it really could be anything that involves text. So there you go. And now that file is set. So the next thing, I've just got some notes here to make sure I'm covering everything. Let's just close this out. Now, so far all I've got is a text file. And what I'm going to do is I need to add to this folder, this Git demo folder, I need to put it under version control. I need to add that hidden folder, which is that list of snapshots. And so to add that hidden folder in Tower, here's what you do. You first open up Tower. And when you first open it up, you're going to see an empty dashboard, with a ton of projects. Once you have projects. Initially it'll be blank. And all you need to do is on the right here, click Add Local Repository. And that's going to say, alright, well, what folder do you want to add that hidden list of snapshots to? So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to come over here and click my little folder so I can go to it. And there's the one file. So I'm just going to click down at the bottom here, Open. And you can see that this says this path does not contain an empty Git repository. And that's because I accidentally said I'm adding a repository. I don't yet have one. So add local repository is actually the wrong option. You want create local repository. And then I'll do the same thing. And I'm going to leave my mistakes in here because I think it's a good learning tool. So you're going to click Choose, and that's going to specify that folder. And the title that you call it here is just what it appears in your dashboard. It has no bearing on anything else. It's just a label for your own purposes. I almost never change it. I usually don't touch anything else. Just hit OK. And what that will do is it'll add this up at the top. And now, that's it. I'm not going to touch anything else just yet. I'm going to go back over here and show you what's happened. So inside the directory, you'll now see a hidden folder called .git. Now this folder is hidden. Unless you're looking at hidden files in OS X, you will not see this folder. It will be invisible. And that's generally fine. You don't have to show it. A lot of people like seeing stuff. So that's what's actually happening. So that is how you kind of get this hidden folder. Now, you can hear all these terms like servers, GitHub, remotes, but at the end of the day, all Git is, from a file standpoint, is this one folder. You're not going to have any other folders. There's nothing special about GitHub or another server or anything. It is just this one folder. And again, this folder is a list of snapshots at various points in times, which are really called commits. So it is a list of commits. Now inside of here, you can think of it more like a database. But from a conceptual standpoint, it's a list of commits. OK, so now that we've got that covered, we're going to move on. And we're going to talk about how to kind of make our first commit, which is that snapshot. So right now, this repository, which is what this is called, this folder, is completely empty. And so we need to say, hey, take our first snapshot of what's in this folder, the Git demo folder right here. Take a snapshot of what it looks like right now. So in Tower, I'm going to double click on this. And what it's going to say right here is it's saying, hey, here's a list of things that I don't have in any snapshot, or things that aren't in the repository at all. And so you kind of want to say, well, hey, I want to add this to this snapshot that I'm going to create. And you could have other files here, but you're saying what file you're actually going to add to this snapshot. Now, most cases, you're just going to hit stage all. And that's kind of flagging what that is. And then you're going to say, OK, I've now identified the things that I want to make up this snapshot. And so then I'm going to click Commit. And now it's going to say, give your snapshot a title, because obviously a snapshot is just that, a snapshot. You want to be able to switch back and forth to different snapshots. Well, what do you call these snapshots? You got to call them something, which is what this is right here. So we're going to call this initial commit. And that's it. I'll just hit OK. And that's it. I've just now made my first snapshot. And I'm going to stop saying snapshot at this point and call them commits, because that's what they're called. But just know from this point forward, you need to think of them as these snapshots. So then if I come over to commits, you'll see initial commit, and I can see when it was. And there's a hash ID associated with it. And down here, I can see that I added, hence the A right here, a file called afile.txt. And you can see that what is new is line 1 and line 2, and that these were added, symbolized by the plus and the fact that they're green, and that they were added. Okay, that's it. So now that I got that snapshot, we're going to create another snapshot. So I'm going to, let's just duplicate this file and call it a second file. And I'm going to open this up. And I'll open it up with TextEdit. Why not? Here's our second file, which is a duplicate. I'll just call it some gibberish. There we go. And save that out. All done. Now, if I go back to Tower and click on Status, you can see that, hey, I've just detected a second file. So I'll hit Stage All and hit Commit and say Second Commit. I really can't type, can I? Okay, Now if I look at my commits, I've got all those. A big key point here is know that Tower is nothing magical. In fact, you can quit it. You don't need Tower running to do any of this. You can quit Tower, the program. Tower has nothing to do with Git. Git, like I said, and this is a key concept to remember, Git in its entirety across everything is simply this folder. And so this folder has magical stuff in it that we'll cover later that detects what's actually happening above it in the same directory and everything that's below it. So if I created a directory, called it folder, and then I move this down, you can see that now Git already knows. This folder already knows that I made that change. Now I haven't told it to make a snapshot yet, but it already knows about that. And this hidden file that you just saw, popped up, this .ds store, has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm talking about or Git. It's a Mac OS X thing that happens with every folder. Okay, so if we go back to Tower, for example, which I did quit, so I'm going to reopen that, and then come back over here, you can see, hey look, some things happened. It sees that I've deleted, or what it detects that I've deleted, and moved that, and made a new folder, and then added a file, and it kind of summarizes all of that when I hit stage all as kind of a revision, or that it's been renamed. And it tracks everything, so you don't need to worry about kind of manually doing anything. So I'll just hit commit, and I'll say reorganized, or just reorg. Okay, so now we have our 3 commits that are in here. And so now, how do you switch between them? Well, switching between them is fairly straightforward. There's a single command that you can run to automatically do that. But before I cover kind of how to switch back and forth commits, we're going to talk about branches, because that's going to be important to be able to do that. Now, branches are simply a group of commits. They're a group of snapshots. They're a little bit more than that, but that's conceptually what you should think of them. So over here you can see, under branches, I have something that says master, and then in parentheses something that says head. Now, the name of this group of snapshots and commits is called master by convention. So you can rename it, but it's generally convention to have kind of your main group called master. Now you can create other groups. So I can come over here to branches, and I can right click and say add new local branch. And I can say we're going to call this another branch. Now it can't contain any spaces, so I'll just do that. Now this is it's a group of commits. Well, I don't want to just have a completely empty group of commits. I'll have nothing in there. So I'm going to start with duplicating the group I already have, which is what this is saying here. It's saying, hey, which group of commits do you actually want to base this off of? So I'll just hit OK. And now you can see over here that I have another branch, which has the exact same commits in it. It's just a duplicate group. But I may want to say, hey, I want to be able to switch to this set. But here, let me illustrate what's actually happening on the disk. If I come over here and I say, you know what, I don't like this folder, I'm going to delete it. Gone. Come back over here. Now I'm on this master branch right now, and from now on I'm going to call it a branch because that is a group of commits, and commits are a group of snapshots. Hit status, and hit stage all. You can see, hey, you've deleted that, so I'm going to say commit. Folder, bye-bye. Oh, good. Now you can see the list there. But you'll see that if I click on this one, that commit doesn't exist right there. Sorry, got a Skype message. I'm just going to hold them off for a second. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, so how do you know kind of, well, which group you're on? That's represented by what that says head. That basically means that's the group that you're currently that's currently active. So for example, if I now came over here, I can see that I am on the master branch, and the last thing that's there is folder bye-bye. And you can see right here in the file system, that's exactly what's represented. Is there is no folder, and I'm on this branch right here. Now watch what happens. If I double-click on another branch, and this only works when there is nothing to stage, because everything's staged, everything's current. But if I double-click, watch what happens. It just came back. It modifies what's actually on your disk, and it does it extremely intelligently. There's no duplication going on. But now you can see the last commit is reorg, and that change was that I renamed a second file, and I moved it into a folder, and I called it a second file.txt. And that's where I am. And so I can swap back and forth between these. And you can see if I do that, it just disappeared. And you can make as many branches as you want. They don't take up any more disk space. It's that convenient. So, okay. So we've covered kind of how to switch branches, but we haven't talked about how to switch snapshots. And so what I can do is, now that I'm back on my master branch, let's just say I want to go, you know what, I want to go back in time to what my file system looked like at this commit. I can right-click on it and say, create branch from this commit. It's going to ask me what I want to call it. So I can call it foobar. And hit OK. And there it is. So now if I double-click on that to make it my head branch, which is called checking out that commit. So if you hear the term checkout, that's what that is. Now you can see that my file system is reflected at that point in time. And I could continue to go on through this kind of cycle by modifying files, making snapshots of commits. Snapshots are commits. And just keep going. And that's a great way to use Git because it is version control. It makes it easy to roll back. But that's not the real power of Git. The power of Git is that you can handle multiple people all working together as a team. It has some extremely powerful ways to deploy things. And so this is a great use of Git, but it's hardly really tapping its power. So now I want to move on to the next thing I'm going to talk about. And I'm just going through my list. Okay, so now we're going to talk about merging. So for example, let's say I switched back over to this one called another branch, where it has reorg, and then I go back to my master branch. But let's say that I want to work off of another branch. Maybe go branch off and try something. Like let's say I go, you know what, I want to open up a file and add a third line down here. And hit save. And then come over here and hit stage all, commit, added a third line. Now here's the interesting part. If you look at this, it goes from reorg to added a third line. But on this branch, and I haven't checked it out by double-clicking on it, I'm just highlighting it by single-clicking, I can see that it goes from reorg to folder bye-bye. Now folder bye-bye happened before this. And so you're like, okay, so now you have really two completely different branches with two completely separate orders of snapshots. Like, what does that do? Well, if Git actually stored things in the order of snapshots, then I could see how that would make sense. Like if you were to merge now master into another branch or another branch into master, you'd go, well, okay, what's actually going to happen? Well, Git doesn't store things on a per snapshot basis like what the entire folder structure looks like. It doesn't even do it on a file level. It does it on a line level. And so it knows really that what has happened is that I added this line to this file in this snapshot, in this branch of this commit. And so it keeps track of all of that. And so what that means is that if I were to switch back over to master, which only has this level, which has just a single file in it that only has line 1 and line 2, but if I merge another branch into master by dragging it and then hitting OK, I can come back over here and now double-click a file and see that I have the third line. And so it merged it just on that one line level. So now I can switch back over to master, which I've already done, and you can see that's my head branch, and you can see what's happened. It's got the reorg, folder bye-bye, added a third line, and then the merge. Um, so that's kind of how you merge branches. So Git snapshots are not as a whole group or even a specific line, but on a line level per file. And this allows for some extremely sophisticated merging. So you can have lots of people all even working on the same file, and it all just kind of works usually. So I'm not going to cover how to resolve merge conflicts in this video, but honestly, once you're done with it, you'll be able to move on to that topic. So so the next thing is, now that you've got your commits and merging and understand that all it's doing is swapping out files on your disk, we're going to start covering remotes. And the thing to remember about remotes is, at the end of the day, they're remote branches is what they are. They're not remote repositories. Now, they are remote repositories, and you'll hear people say that's not a remote repository. But conceptually, you need to think about it as there are remote branches. Now, if I had this folder, everything that you see in Git demo, someplace else, like an exact duplicate of everything, not just the files or the folder, but the actual Git repo that goes along with it, but everything duplicated in its entirety on a completely different location, whether it be on this computer or server, doesn't really matter. You can merge from the branches that are in the one that's on your computer to another branch that's on that same repository. That's all you're doing. So whether you have a master branch here and the same master branch someplace else, and you make changes to your master branch, you just merge, just by dragging, your master branch to the remote master branch. That's all that's happening. That's all that a remote is. And so now we're going to cover kind of how to set up GitHub and a repo so that you're familiar with how that works. We've already covered how to create a repository, how to do commits, how to do branches, how to switch between commits, how to switch between branches. And so we've covered really most of Git. And if you get this, no pun intended, but get this concept so far, you're pretty much mostly there. So now what we're going to do is move over into GitHub. And you can see that when you go to GitHub, you're going to log in as yourself, as your account. And that's because, or you can log in as 10.4 GitHub as well. Either one will work. But at the end of the day, you're going to be creating a remote repository. And so you're going to go to switch context to 10.4 agency, or you can switch context to your account. And you can see the list of repositories right here. And what you're going to do is click New Repository. And it's going to ask for a name. Now this is the same thing that you've been doing. So I could create something called Git Demo. But it's the name of the project. And as soon as I hit Tab, you'll see that it's checking to see if that name is available or currently being used in the 10.4 account. You generally want it private. The GitHub provides an unlimited number of public repositories, but there's only a fixed number based on what you pay for private. And then it's saying initialize this README with or initialize this repository with a README. Now this is kind of important to just understand, is that remember when we created a file and then we said, okay, now create a repository from this, but before we actually did our initial commit, we had an empty repository. And what this is saying is that this will actually create kind of your first commit, which simply only has a single text file in it, which is called readme.md, and it stands for Markdown. And if you don't know what Markdown is, you should get familiar with it. But it's basically a simplified syntax for text files, so that you can do some basic formatting and it still reads pretty well. We're going to leave this off for right now, even though it's generally a good idea to do. But I'm doing that because I want you to understand kind of what's actually happening. So I'm going to click Create Repository, and it creates just a bare bones repository. Literally what it's done is create this folder, an empty Git folder. That's it. That's all that's there. There's nothing special about it. And so now what we want to do is we actually want to duplicate our repository, which is this hidden Git folder, onto GitHub. And so here's the URL to do that, and I can select SSH as the protocol to do that. So in Tower, what you're going to do is you're going to click under Remote, Add a Remote Repository. And you're just going to give it a name. And you can really call it anything you want. This is the, by convention, we usually say origin. And what that means is the main authoritative source for this project is the origin. Not where it's live or where it's on staging or production, but the authoritative location for this code. And then you can see the repository URL, which I can paste in. Now, you'll notice that throughout all of this, I have not used any passwords. No usernames, no passwords. And the reason for that is because I have an SSH key. Now, the scope of dealing with SSH access and keys and that kind of thing is really independent of Git. Git happens to use SSH, and so it makes it very convenient. It kind of piggybacks on that because it is SSH under the hood. But just know that you need to be familiar with SSH keys and SSH access to be able to do this. And that's a separate thing from Git. But once you have SSH set up and your keys set up in GitHub and on your computer, then you won't have to be dealing with any more usernames and passwords. So, okay, so then I'm going to click Add. And again, at this point, if you're going, well, great, now I can't do this because I have no idea what SSH keys are. What you're going to be doing is running a command in terminal. Once you're inside the .ssh folder that's inside your home directory, you're going to run a command that creates an SSH key for you. And one of them will be called id_rsa.pub. The contents of that text file need to get put into your GitHub account under SSH keys. And once you do that, that'll grant access for you. So you're going to hit Add, and it will add that remote repository, which again is completely empty. Now, it's giving me an error here saying that connection failed. Now, the reason for that is because I don't have access to this repository. 10.4 does, but remember, this is all based on keys. So there are no usernames and passwords here. It's saying, hey, the key that my computer has on this Mac computer is not registered as having access to this repository. And so what I need to do is under Admin, I need to go to Teams and add 10.4 developers, of which I personally am a member of. You can see me right there, and that's my personal account. Now, when I come back here and I click Add, it'll work. And then no errors. That means it worked, believe it or not. Hit Close. And now you can see I have Origin, which is the name of that remote, and then I have nothing in there whatsoever. And that's because there's nothing in that Git folder. There is stuff, but for all intents and purposes, there's nothing in that folder. So I need to stick something in that folder. Very first thing you always do is your master branch. Again, master is a convention for the main branch. You typically would create a develop branch or a dev branch, or work with other branches. But from a concept standpoint, there's just no branch in there. And you know what a branch is now. So I'm going to pull this over to Origin. And this is doing a push to, and I'm establishing a connection here. Let me go through each one of these. This is saying, what is it that I'm sending off to some La La Land server? So I'm going to say, hey, I want master. That's the branch I want. The remote, what remote, meaning really what server, do I want to send this to? And I'm going to do it to the one I called Origin, which is GitHub, and I could have called it GitHub. And it's saying what branch name. Now, these usually match because you want them to say the same thing or it gets confusing. But you could call this something differently if you wanted to. Now, track I want to spend a little bit of time talking about because while it's really fairly irrelevant in terms of understanding the concept, it's just good to know what it does. What this means is that it's going to create a informational link between your local branch and your remote branch. And what I mean by informational link is it's going to say, because you're saying this and you're creating this link of information, it means that as certain things happen to one or the other, you'll get a little bit more information. Like if you do a commit on your local branch, it'll be able to say, okay, well, I'm tracked to a remote branch. How does it compare? And it'll be able to tell you, oh, I'm so many commits ahead or behind that remote. And so that's the advantage of tracking it. Now, you won't always use this, but you understand what it's doing. For right now, I'll say go ahead and track this branch and hit OK. And it's done. So now I've just pushed to GitHub. And in fact, if you go over to GitHub and you click on back, or I click on back, and then I click on Git Demo, you'll see what makes it up. And I can even click on the file and see what's there. I can click on raw, see the raw text that's on that file. There is the commit list right there, just like you see in Tower. And that's because this folder, this list of commits, is now identical in every way to what is on GitHub. They are looking inside of that folder and then using their scripting magic to pull out the list of commits, but that's what it's doing. That's all that's there. I can see branches, master branch, because that's the only one that I put up there. There's also a wiki that I could use that's associated with this repository, which might be good for 10.4 to start using. There's an issue tracker. I prefer utrack, but does all the same stuff that utrack does. Well, most of the stuff utrack does. And you'll notice that there's a yellow line here that says we highly recommend adding a README. And so that's a good thing to do because it gives instructions to other developers. So we're going to go do that now. So I'm going to duplicate this file because it's convenient. I'm going to rename it README, and I'm going to change the extension to MD, which is Markdown. Now, Markdown is a superset of regular text, I think. So any regular text in there is acceptable Markdown text. But I can come over here and I can say, put a couple pounds in here, maybe an asterisk, and kind of see some copy above and below it. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to come back over to Tower, and here's how fast it gets. You get really used to going stage all, commit, added, README. And you generally don't do commits on a per file level, or even per line level, or even a per group level. You do commits on a set of functionality. So if you're building the functionality of something, or building out a page, or building out a thing, that's when you'd want to do a commit. So don't it's not going to hurt yourself doing lots of commits. It's just extra work. But you also don't want to not commit enough. It's kind of a balance. So when there's a good group of something where you think it might be good to keep that snapshot, that's when you want to do a commit. So we're going to take master, and we're going to drag that over here to push that up to GitHub. And that's it. Also, when you do these pushes, because I could do this to deploy it to a live server as well. When you do these pushes, it is compressing it on your computer and then pushing it up to the remote, and only fundamentally doing what's changed. So you're not having to. I don't have to worry about what I changed. I could come in here and make 1,000 different files, all kinds of complex changes, and I don't have to worry about what's changed. I just drag this, and it takes care of dealing with what's changed. So if I come over here and I reload the page, now that I've got that README, you'll see that that text will show up at the bottom. Yeah, right there. Sorry, the screen's a little small. And so you want to include instructions about, hey, this is what the project is, this is how to deploy it. A lot of times you're going to want to put useful information on how another developer, what another developer needs to pick back up on this project. So that's what goes in the README. Okay, so that is that. Now, fundamentally, that's all you need to know. For the remotes, you're going to have a different URL for staging and production. So I can click on Add a Remote Repository, and this repository URL will be different for production. But what will happen is when you add it, you'll see, instead of origin, there'll be another one that appears down here that says production. and another branch that says master, and you just drag onto that, and that just pushed it live. And that's how you do that. Um, so what's actually now remember, even when you push this live, again, what you're doing is you're moving this folder. That's all you're doing. What's on the remote, what's on GitHub, what's on your computer, what's on all your different computers, is just this one folder. So if somebody else made a change, it means that they're going to update this branch, and you're going to want that change. And so all you need to do, that just means that their folder is different than your folder. And so you want to merge from that branch to your branch, just like we did before. So you're going to go, oh, well, I need to know, I can't just drag, because remember that this is this master branch is a representation of what it is at the time of when you last checked it. And so right now, I don't know if any changes have been made to master. Well, I do because I made it, but normally you wouldn't. So you're going to right-click on origin and do fetch from remote repository. That's going to go out to the server and say, I just want to check to see if anything's been changed to that branch that I don't have. Now, in this case, nothing's been changed, so it'll say that it's up to date. But if something were changed, because this branch is tracked, remember when we clicked add tracking, how it's tracked to origin/master, it will know that this branch is X number of commits ahead or behind. And it'll give you a little number over here to show you that. And so then all you need to do is just drag this. Or in this case, because this is tracked and you're checked out, meaning this is your head branch, you can just hit pull. But I like to explicitly do it so that you can see what's actually happening. So I'll just do a pull and hit OK. And that'll grab any changes that other developers have done. And it will update the files on your file system. What would have happened right there is you'd see a list of commits that other people have done, and the files on your file system would have changed accordingly. So that's how you can just kind of continue on. Now, again, on this remote, and this could be a production server, it could be staging, how does it actually get live? Well, what's happening is you're pushing to, you're updating that remote repo, which is this folder. And inside of this folder, we're not going to talk about a lot of what's in here, but one of the things is called hooks. And this is a list of text files. Technically, they're shell scripts. But you can rename one of these. So for instance, if I take post update and I duplicate that and rename it to simply post update, which it won't let me do right now, but you'll never need to do this. This is only ever done on a remote server. But how it's done is this file is modified. And if you look at it on the remote server, which again is simply a copy of this of that repo, and you open this, well, there's not a lot in here. But what you do is you execute shell commands. And so what we do on the remote repo is we say, okay, well, you're going to change to this other directory, then you're going to initialize an empty Git repository, and then you're going to do a git pull, which is what we do, what we just did here, from the repo that's on the server, so that every time you push to that repo, it's on the server, switching over to the web root, doing a pull from the repo that's on a different location on the server, and deploying it. And that's all that's happening. You might want to rewind the video and listen to that again, but that's what's going on. So that's fundamentally all Git is. You can work with you can have as many remotes as you want. You can have as many branches as you want. You can have different remotes on different servers. You can see who did what. You can roll back to certain things. You can merge. You can resolve conflicts. Tower does not need to be running. You can do every single thing that Tower can do, and then some can be done with the command line using just the commands with get. So I could, for instance, let me clear this out, change directory to, and I'm just going to open up the folder that I had, git demo, change directory to git demo, and then I can see, because I'm using ZSH, I get some little extra info here, but if you're using bash, you won't see quite as much, but either way. And if I list what's in here, and this is a shortcut. If you are not getting that, you can type ls-la. You can see that. You can see that what's in that directory. And I can do git status. And I can see I'm on branch master, and there's nothing to commit. I can do git pull, git push, I can do fetches. I can stage files. Can do anything and then some. There's some really advanced stuff that you can get into. That if you find yourself in kind of a hard situation where you get kind of, for instance, if you start committing to no branch, which sometimes people get into, you can use, I think it's refog to solve that. If you accidentally delete things, you can recover them. If you go, you know what, I have changed files on my disk that I don't want to make a commit of, you can solve that. Let's say that somebody accidentally FTPs files to the remote master. What happens is that branch now has unstaged commits to it, and so you won't be able to. No one else will be able to do a git deployment to it because it'll prevent what are called fast forwards, which is saying, hey, the remote has newer changes than what you have, but they're not committed, so I'm not going to allow you to do this commit. So what do? Well, on the remote, you can execute git reset hard, and then the actual commit ID, which is what that is, a little hash over here, and it'll throw away any unstaged files and do a force reset of that particular commit. So there's stuff like that that you can do that Tower doesn't really support. But that's it. You even don't need to create. You don't ever need to go to GitHub. Inside Tower, inside your dashboard, there's an option for create GitHub repository right there. So you don't ever need to touch it if you want to do it that way. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that I did not cover. But this should give you a conceptual understanding of what Git is under the hood and kind of how to use it, at least at a basic level, so that now when you go look at some other Git tutorials online and they say, okay, we're going to start. To create a branch, you do this, and now I can do this. You actually kind of know what a branch is in your mind. You know what commits are. And remotes. All the stuff that I mentioned at the beginning of this video that are like, well, how do you know what this stuff is? This covers all of that. And now you should be able to wrap your mind around it a little bit easier. That's it. I apologize for all the hardcore Git users. This is not a technically correct tutorial, but I hope it gets the point across.